What's up, guys? Paddy McDonald here, your host of Leaders with Heart. And today I'm excited to share an inspiring conversation with Jason Bart, who is a leader in the space of men's work around the world. And he focuses more specifically on a field called Tantra. But primarily, what this means is he's helping men around the world rediscover that spark, that inner flame inside of themselves that may have gone out over the years. And this was Jason's own experience where through decades of being the best husband and father that he could be, he lost himself in the process and therefore didn't have the ability to show up for his family in the way that he would have liked as well. And through this radical self-honesty, he was able to then go on a process of rediscovery, of finding himself again, and then being able to continue to show up as the best version of himself for his family and now also the world. So through sharing this with men around the world, he's found his passion again, and he's excited to continue to share this message far and wide. So in this conversation, we go through a lot of that, including his own personal journey and also what you can do to best keep that flame burning strongly inside yourself. And this is a message that really resonates with you. At the end of the podcast, Jason and I talk a little bit about a retreat that we're putting together in March in Melbourne, Australia. So for 9 days, we're going to be dropping deep as a group of brothers and really going into that innate reason for our own existence. What's our own purpose in this world? And it's a very embodied experience that you can find out more about in the show notes. But if it's something you're interested in, there's 7 days of dropping in as men together, followed by 2 days of connecting with a women's retreat that's doing something similar. So very exciting that we're putting this together. Reach out if you want to hear more about it. Otherwise, enjoy the podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Much love. So here today with the creator of the Reactivated Man program, Jason Bart. And Jason's also a good friend who happened to be co-creating a men's initiation journey with in March next year, which is a really exciting deep dive into men's work and what it means to be a man navigating this world and all of the challenges that come with that. So it's a really exciting opportunity today to talk to Jason and really hear about how his journey in this space has supported him in leadership in all areas of his life. So Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Paddy. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And you've just flown into Melbourne from Europe. You spent a bit of time over there.
Yeah, I did. The last 3 months traveling through Europe and running and facilitating and supporting men's work over there, and yeah, connecting with new tribe. It feels like this is a home that I'm expanding into and coming back to Europe, and yeah, a little bit back to my roots. My family's from the Netherlands, so I spent a little bit of time there, but it feels good to be in Europe. So it feels good to be back in Australia as well. Yeah. But yeah, it feels like my wings open up when I was in Europe. So I'm excited. Amazing. Very excited.
From our conversations, I know that community and tribe is very important to you. And it feels like you're building that globally in multiple locations at once. Is that a challenge at times, or is that?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, to create something, I feel like there needs to be an anchor. And sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to be an anchor for something when you're not physically in that space. And obviously tech makes it easier and easier to be able to do that. And at the same time, there is a certain vibration that is present when you're physically there. Because then I'm resonating with the land that I'm wanting to ground in, and resonating more coherently with the people that I'm doing. And I think that's also why I'm wanting to spend more time in Europe, because that is a frequency I'm wanting to tune into moving forward for the next couple of years. I'm not saying forever, but yeah, I've been in Australia now for the most of the last 25 years. And yeah, I'm looking to open that up a little bit.
What is it about Europe that you feel like, if you were to pinpoint the nature of it?
I feel like I love culture, and I really love the essence of the timeline that's available in Europe. I was staying at a friend's house that's 400 years old, and that wasn't even an old house. So then it's one of those things that's obviously the land in Australia is much, much older, but that's not necessarily something I'm deeply connected to, and that is my choice to not deeply connect to that. And it's also not my origins, whereas the European culture is more my origin. So it feels in some ways that it holds me differently, and it springboards me differently. And yeah, it's really dynamic, and it inspires me. It really inspires me to step up into a new level of presence for myself. And it feels like there's a life challenge there for me to step into a new relationship with myself and my surroundings that I'm excited about. So
amazing.
yeah.
What I'm hearing you say in all of that too is it sounds as though you're really getting a sense of, I guess, how small we are as a human being living this life in the scheme of all of time, and having connection to the grandiosity of life that's come before us can really help us feel, I guess, the magnitude of what's available in this lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. And I think also some of it is related to the fact that while I've been in Australia, a lot of it I've been in Perth, which is the most isolated city in the whole world.
Right.
And so I want to have a deeper interaction, and, being in Lisbon or being in Ibiza or being in Amsterdam, it's all just a couple of hours away from each other. Whereas being based in Perth, everything is at least 4 hours away, and that's just to the nearest city or country outside, so I'm looking for a more dense tapestry at the moment.
I remember I lived in the Netherlands briefly as well, and about 6 months, and we all had bicycles there, and we could buy bicycle from the Netherlands to Belgium in like 15 minutes, and like someone actually bicycled across like 4 countries in one day, just doing the loops.
That's right. You can do that pretty easy.
Pretty hard in Australia to bicycle to the closest country.
Even just from one side of the country to the other is like quite a feat.
Amazing. And so what's been the motivation for you to like go on this journey across to Europe and now to come back here to Australia? Like it sounds like you're you're on a real journey, a real, I guess, path of following something, and I'd love to hear from you what that is.
Well, there was something that happened after my divorce, which was about 12 years ago now, where I tuned into my inner flame, and I recognized that it had almost gone out, and that I had lost my own sovereignty, my own power, my own identity through being very submissive in my marriage for 11 years. And, it came through that thing of happy wife, happy life. What can I do to make her happy, make the kids happy? And, I was at the end of the queue looking after myself. And that was a personal awareness that I didn't have. So I just want to be clear that there's no blame or shame or anything on anyone else. It was my choice. But after the divorce, I really felt lost. I felt completely confused and lost as to what I wanted to do in life. Then I kind of ran away to Bali for a few years because of the idea of building community, and the new earth was really what was calling me. And I recognized that there were aspects for myself where I was abandoning my kids emotionally and physically that needed some healing before I could really step into my own authority. And so I came back to Australia, and I was so blessed to have both of my daughters live with me one-on-one and really live with them through that transition of like 17 to 19 and helping them step into adulthood and helping them to trust that they have choice and that their own truth, their own self-importance is the most important thing. We talk about that in aeroplanes, and when the masks drop, put on your own mask first and then put on someone else's. And often in our society, we're told to look after the other, to sacrifice ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that really can deplete who we are and the capacity that we have to be able to support others.
Yeah.
And so for me, especially in that time when I was in Bali, it was very much a reclaiming of myself and exploring what does that look like and what do I want to do and what's important to me.
Yeah.
And then coming back and healing some of those emotional wounds with my kids allowed me to heal what was going on and real, shards that were in my heart that I wanted to give attention to, and I wanted them to have some healing with that as well, recognizing that daddy-daughter patterns have a lot to do with the daughter-boyfriend patterns. And I wanted them to have healthy relationships moving forward and not be burdened by, trauma from our relationship. So that was a really important piece for me. And then my youngest daughter turned 18, and I felt like the responsibility in many ways had been reduced, and that they are now, very self-sufficient, amazing humans, and I don't need to be in Perth anymore because my youngest daughter is driving around in a van with her boyfriend around Australia, and my eldest daughter wants to move to Europe next year as well. So it was time to move. It was time to really feel free to open up my wings. And, one of my favorite sayings is, when you jump off a cliff, don't worry about whether you've got a parachute or not, because you've got wings. And we often worry about whether we've got a parachute and something's going to save us if we jump.
Safety net.
Right?
Yeah.
But when we can really step into the magnificence of self and we can just jump off and know that we have the capacity to fly and build and create our own reality, that's where I feel I am. And I've got my wings out, and I'm just wanting to have a look around the world. And yeah, I've got a passport that's got lots of empty pages and I want to start filling them.
Yeah.
So,
amazing
yeah.
I can definitely relate to that at the moment, actually, with this sense of needing to take a leap of faith and wanting to make sure that all the safety nets are in place before I do that. But then it's not actually a leap of faith anymore, is it? Because I'm taking all the mystery out of it.
It's a leap of safety.
Yeah, for sure. So I love hearing that, and I really love hearing how and I'd love for you to reflect back anything that's feeling true in this, because what I heard you say is that you prioritize service so highly to your family, especially, that you lost yourself. And you had to go the other direction and really go in search of yourself to then be able to come back to be of an even higher level of service.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is this interconnected cycle, or, there's the metaphor of the oxygen mask, like we heard, of looking after ourselves first to then be of higher service. But I noticed my own tendency to want a black and white answer of is it that one or is it that one? When maybe it's both. Maybe it's either or, depending on the context. Or I'd love to hear your take on how we can be in tune with, when is it time to be of service and when is it time to serve my own needs? And is it possible to do both at the same time?
Well, I truly believe that the only time something is black or white is when we're in a stress response. As soon as we have real cognition around what is available, there is at least 3 options, but really there's a gradient everywhere between black and white. And we can transition and move fluidly between, right now I'm 99% looking after me, or 99% in service, and I can actually go to 50-50 or 70-30 or whatever is real in the moment. It's when it's okay, I have to stop looking after someone else because I have to start looking after me. That's because we're in such a stress response that we have to we can only see black or white. And the sooner we start caring for ourselves, the sooner we can start seeing that there is some fluidity in that. And I can care for myself and care for you at the same time. And a classic example would be giving someone a massage, right? And if you were the masseuse giving the massage and you're starting to get like some tightness in your back, then you can keep massaging that person, but you change your posture so that you're actually starting to stretch that muscle for yourself or putting less strain on that muscle. So you're caring for yourself while still caring for the other.
Yeah.
As a very basic example.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do we go about managing that stress response then? Because it sounds as though that can be the thing that takes us out of that creativity and ability to serve all, including ourselves, to the highest degree.
Yeah, and I think the first piece around managing a stress response is recognizing that you're in a stress response.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that it's fair enough that I'm stressed out right now and that I don't feel safe or that I feel burdened or whatever your stress is related to. And then recognizing, okay, you know, there's deep emotional release techniques that we can go into with this. But the very first one, if we can catch it soon enough, is generally, do I want to fight this or do I want to run away from it?
Yeah.
And then the sooner we can recognize that and go into an emotional release technique, we can just start to embody, okay, I want to run and I'm safe, you know, and that's the important thing, that a stress response is related to, you know, the story of a gazelle and a lion. And, you know, the stress response is I need to run because there is something after me and it's a life and death situation. Whereas, you know, when someone says something to us that we don't feel comfortable about, that's not a life or death situation, but our stress responses trigger it as if it is. And the sooner we can actually get into a place of, okay, I am safe. I really didn't like what they said, but I'm breathing. I'm safe. I'm not going to get physically injured here. And I can self-soothe. You know, being able to self-soothe is such an important piece that I feel is not often used in our society. And of course, there's a lot of people that are wanting to do this more and more. And then there's a lot of other people that just want to hand over authority and say, I'm uncomfortable and I need you to change who you are so that I can be comfortable. And my response is, that is not my responsibility to care for you. It's not my job to make you happy. And of course, it's also not my job to violate your safety, right? And there's a balance between that. If you don't like what I say, then remove yourself from my environment, right? Or ask me to leave your environment, as opposed to then black or white. If you're going to be like that, you have to leave.
So what I hear in that is there's a real empowerment of taking ownership of our own sphere of control. Like, this is, I can't control how this person's going to react to me, but I can control, do I stick around? Do I make a request for them to change their behavior, which they may say no to?
And something that's really important to understand as well is when you're working with boundaries and personal boundaries are not a request. Okay. So if you're speaking to me in a way that I don't like, a boundary isn't saying, can you speak to me nicer? Because then that's, again, having an expectation for you to change. My boundary is, if you speak to me like that, I'm going to leave. That's my boundary. And if you continue to speak to me like that, then I don't actually want to have a relationship with you at all. That's my boundary. I'm in control. And often we externalize our boundaries even and make another person responsible to change so that my boundaries are being met. And that's not your job to fulfill my boundaries. That's my job.
Yeah, I hear that. And so to break it down a little bit and to also just provide some context for some of the topics we're speaking about here. So when we speak about like self-soothing or emotional release or having a sense of like our own boundaries and things, how would you describe that? What would be the reason for someone wanting to apply some of these things first and foremost? Why is it important for us to have our own boundaries, and why is it important for us to want to manage our own emotions in a way that can be supportive and self-soothing?
Because we want to live a happy, magnificent life, right? And when things are happening around us, we all have bias. We all have things we like and don't like. You know, you might like the cold, I might like the heat in weather-wise, right? So the weather isn't doing anything right or wrong. It's just being the weather. And then it's up to us to say, well, you know, I love it when it's like this and it's nice and hot. And you're like, oh God, I can't stand it because I want to put on my jackets and feel comfortable and cozy. You know, I like it when it's cold. So, you know, boundaries is creating an environment for ourselves where we feel enjoy in our own being and that we're happy with our environment. And it's our right to feel not only safe, but like enjoy daily from moment to moment. And it's our responsibility to act in ways and make choices so that we're following our joy or following our bliss or, you know, following the magnificence that shines from within us. So that's the first reason why you want to have boundaries, right? And people are going to rub up against you because we have traumas, right? We have a trauma that is created from birth because we were all warm and cozy inside, you know, our mum's belly. And then all of a sudden we're in the cold and we're separated, right? And this is the first separation where we start feeling disconnected from life, from our mother, from source. Like everything's all warm and connected. But then all of a sudden we start creating separation. And then, you know, people do things around us, like they yell or they act in a certain way that doesn't feel safe for us. And then that can create an internal trauma that then can get reflected by our surroundings.
Right. Okay.
And so we're always going to be triggered. It's just a question of how well can we respond? What is our capacity to respond to our surroundings, right? And so this is where being able to self-soothe and go, okay, I'm actually feeling really uncomfortable now. I'm feeling cold, right? That's uncomfortability. I'm going to put on a jumper or a jacket. Good self-soothing. Good on you for looking after yourself. You don't have to sit there shivering in the cold, hoping that the weather's going to get warmer and blaming the weather for not being warmer. Like we have a capacity to change our environment so that we feel good.
And so to pause on that, so this is like a really powerful metaphor around the weather, right? And so to really make it abundantly clear about how this can apply to our day-to-day life, like if someone might be in their workplace, for example, and they're feeling uncomfortable in some particular way, often we might hear that person talk about how a colleague or their boss or a client has done something to make them feel a certain way. And the desire is for that other person to change. And so what I'm hearing you say is it's like the weather, like the weather's going to be constantly changing outside. There's going to be times we like it, times we don't like it. There's going to be times our boss is supportive of us and really nice to be around, and times when we really don't like the way they're acting.
Yeah.
But we get to decide how we respond and take a bit of ownership and control back into how we navigate that.
Yeah. And, you know, we often don't make these choices for the fear of losing love or the fear of losing safety. Right? So I'm not going to speak up to my boss because if I do that, then he's going to fire me. Well, if it's creating conditions that you don't want to be in, then you don't want to be there anyway. Same in a relationship, you know, they're ideal with all of these things except for this. And then, you know, when they do that, I feel like nothing, right? Well, how often do you want to feel like nothing in your relationship before you go, well, that's more important than staying with the ideal partner, right? And yeah, it's that thing of after a while, it can take more energy to not do something than it does to do something, right? The problem with that is that it's almost like a pressure cooker. and we just let it build up, and we let it build up, and we let it build up, and then we've got no training at schools or and often with our parents. We've got no training around emotional intelligence, and this pressure builds up, and then it bursts off, and I just purge all of my anger from not only what you just said, which was the straw that broke the camel's back, but all of the straw that broke the camel's back is now your responsibility because I need to get it out. And, you know, it's one of those things when I'm talking with my clients, what is it that you need to say? And what is it that person needs to hear, right? Because you might need to say a lot. They might only need to hear 1% of that. But often we just tell everyone everything that we need to say, and it doesn't serve anyone except cause greater separation.
Yeah, I hear that. So you've mentioned like self-soothing and emotional release being ways to, I guess, look after our own needs from within to then enable us to show up to our human interactions from a place of not needing to have those needs met by someone else.
Yeah.
What are some basic ways for someone that this is pretty new to? What would be some ways for someone to, after they've had that awareness that there's something going on, they're cold, so to speak, emotionally, let's say, there's something happening in their system. How would they go about navigating that?
There's a really good 3-letter technique. So say, for example, there is something going on with your partner or your boss, right? And you can write 3 letters. So the first letter is just your full purge abuse, like it's your fault, you did this, you, right? And you just put it all down on paper and you just let it all out, right? Then you go into the spiritual bypass almost, where it's like, this is all for me, and it's, you know, I needed to learn this, and I thank you for being the reflection so that I can learn all of this, and it's all me. Yeah. And then the 3rd letter is somewhere in the middle, where it's like, okay, I'm not comfortable when you do this, and bringing the 2 together. And then from the 3rd letter, decide what needs to be said. But it's a way to really let the full polarity and the full spectrum of what's alive inside of you be voiced. And that can be a real easy way to help the brain just download what's going on and be a good purge. But through the tantric philosophy, which is kind of what saved my life, was breath, sound, and movement, right? And really learning the tools. So simply just shaking. When you're agitated, you know, and this is what happens to a gazelle. It will be chased by a lion, and if it doesn't get caught by the lion, which most of the time they don't, they just shake their whole body for about 10 minutes, and then they just shake and shake and shake and shake, and then the stress hormones have been released, and they go back to just gently grazing and being at ease and being in connection with nature. Whereas we get a stress response, like we almost have a car accident, or someone's beloved says something to us that really kind of like goes through the armor and hurts the heart, and we don't release it. We just hold on to it. We kind of get these, you know, beach balls and try and push them underneath the water and hold them there. And then we've got like 15 of these beach balls that we're trying to hold underwater at the same time and hope to God none of them pop out. But of course they will, right? So just shake your body, make some sound, let out some breath. Deep breathing into the belly is one of the most important things.
Okay, amazing. Really hearing how those 2 techniques could go well together as well, like writing all those things down and feeling whatever's coming up and using breath, sound, and movement to clear some of that at the same time.
Totally, because there's this cellular memory, and that is what needs to be released through the breath, sound, and movement. And then there's this cognitive patterning that's happening as well, that's saying, yeah, but this, and yeah, but that. And it's just, well, put all of the buts on paper. Yeah.
Sounds like a great image.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Beautiful. So I know that you focus a lot of your work on men's work.
Yeah.
And so basically what we mean by men's work is spaces where it's solely people who are born in male bodies. So that I guess I'd love to hear from you, like why? What's the reason that we create these spaces where it's one particular cross-section of society that comes together to do some of this deep inner transformational work?
Yeah. And there's multiple reasons. And I really love like co-gender spaces as well. And I feel that there's a fair bit of space for that, and there's lots of different options. And I also feel that there are a lot of women's circles and space for women to be held in that. And I know for myself that it was working deeply with other men that helped me to create a new level of safety. And for 90% of male bodies, when there is a female body, there is a chemical reaction that's happening in the body. And there is a primal essence in us that goes right back to, when we were living in caves, of survival, right? And this survival is partly procreation. And if there are 15 men in the room and one woman in the room, then the ability for my genes to continue and my ancestry to continue, I need to procreate with that one woman that's in the room. Yeah. And now, even if the balance is even, there's still going to be some competition of, okay, well, I need to, for me, find the best mate for this. So it just removes that from the space. And all of a sudden, there is one element of competition that's taken out.
And what you're talking about here, at least from my experience, is not something that people are thinking about, right? This is a subconscious, like in the body reaction.
Yeah.
Like men aren't thinking, oh, there's one woman there, I need to mate with them. A lot of these men aren't physically going to want to go down that path. They might have a partner already. They might not be interested. But like, regardless, this is something that physiologically is having some effect on how we're showing up.
Yeah. And I think a really important piece to understand with this is when we have the primal male-female, that the basic rules are very basic, right? It's survival. And as we've evolved, we've moved beyond those basics of survival, and we've now have a greater ability to, make other choices. But that doesn't mean that the primal pieces aren't there anymore. And it's almost like a layered aspect, and the primal is still there. And often there is this tendency to negate or even shame these primal aspects of ourself. And they are a core element of who we are. It's almost like, oh, the foundations for this building are underground and I don't like things that are in the dark. So I'm actually going to not care for my foundations at all. And hopefully, I hope that they rot away and dissolve completely. But then the building can't stand without these foundations. So it's actually really important for us to go, okay, my foundations are there. I have an ability now to not respond automatically from those foundations, but that they are the core of who I am. And I'm going to acknowledge their input and their bias and the capacity that they give me to be strong in the world. And my element of survival now actually might be around creativity and go, I want to bring the fire that I have to survive into resolving this problem that my mind is working on right now, as opposed to trying to disconnect from that power altogether.
Okay, interesting. It sounds similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like once we've met that first level of physical safety, and then we can meet the next level of food and
shelter,
and then we can move up to self-actualization and these other levels.
And we don't want to be working at those top levels, but get rid of safety and food and shelter and the layers underneath. We really want to own them and make sure that they stay solid so that we can stay in these higher states.
Amazing. So that's one of the reasons why a male-only container
Yeah.
can be supportive.
Yeah.
Taking away that. Are there any other reasons that you found that men come together like this?
Yeah, I mean, there is also a brotherhood that a lot of men are looking for. That, you know, and I think that this is one of the reasons that men's team sports like have a certain camaraderie, where, you know, when men go to war together, there is a bonding that happens that doesn't happen in other forms. You know, we don't often create these same bonds just purely by dialogue. You know, when we build something together or we go through a difficult scenario together, then there is this bonding that happens of I can trust you, you know, that goes beyond what I hear you say. And in a world that is inherently told to us that it's very, very unsafe, it's really important for men to feel safe with their other brothers and not that they are threatened. And this is one of the pieces of, you know, the alpha game that we're told about, that, you know, you need to be the alpha, or if you're not the alpha, then you're going to be the submissive and you're going to be controlled and dominated and all of those things. And taking those dynamics out of the group and bringing it into the individual, where I am the most alpha Jason Bart that is ever going to be on the planet. Right? Yeah. And you're the most alpha Paddy McDonald that's ever going to be on the planet. Yeah. And if we can own the fullness of that, then we can actually start to build this trust and go, all right, with you and who you are and me and who I am, now we can actually do this together, which is going to support me, support you, and support our surroundings. And this is the win-win-win-win-win type of equations, where it's good for me, it's good for you, it's good for our family, it's good for our tribe, it's good for the planet, it's good for everyone and everything. That is the equation that we're looking for. And we often, through
that's on me.
So through this environment of scarcity that we're told that we have, we're told that we can't be safe. And we are. Like, I have a deep inherent belief that there is a conspiracy going on, that the universe is designed to support me in my magnificence and to support you in your magnificence. And if we actually allow that to be true, that the world all of a sudden doesn't only feel safe, it feels designed for my growth, for my ease, for my joy. And that doesn't mean that everything's always going to be easy, because sometimes it's for my learning so I can share. And we need to go through those dark nights of the soul to really find the gems that we can then, you know, the deeper that we go into this journey, the more pure these diamond crystals are that we can mine. And then we can bring them up and into the light, and then the light reflects out into all directions.
Love that.
Yeah.
So I'm really hearing, when you're sharing all that as well, about the brotherhood piece as well, and the piece about being able to really trust another person because we've gone through a shared experience. I was really hearing how, at least in my perspective, this has implications that go far beyond like a one-on-one brotherhood as well, right? Like, do you see this having any connection to, you know, global challenges like war, like allocation of resources, like any ways that there's geopolitical power dynamics that are at play, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is just me against you on bigger and bigger levels. And I'm right, you're wrong on bigger and bigger levels. And when we can get to the place of I'm right and you're right and we don't agree, that we can come to a place of coexistence where you are you, I am me, and the places where there's overlap and joy, great, and there's places where there's not overlap and not joy, and they're separated in our realities, and that's okay. But it's important. You know, the first thing that's important is for us to realize, what do I like? What do I actually want? You know, what's important? What are my values? What are my core values? And when we're in a survival mode, we don't have room or even feel that it is relevant what my needs are or my wants and desires are, because right now I just need to pay my bills, get food on the table, and make sure that the kids don't kill themselves. You know, that's my baseline. I don't have room for what is my dream, what am I here for. And we have allowed ourselves to be submissive to the power dynamics that are in our environment. And it's a power over dynamic that we see a lot in relationships, that we see in work relationships, in family relationships, beloved relationships, where my way or the highway kind of scenarios, as opposed to, I don't understand where you're coming from. Like, help me understand. And I still might not agree, but my curiosity is, how can you not think like I think? Because if you think something else, then I'm either missing something or you're missing something, or there's a core value difference. But I'm curious. What is it? And why is that a core value for you and not this as a core value? And not that you need to then believe or be in line with my core values, but I'm just curious. And it's this curiosity that I have about humanity that allows me to study myself and the people around me as to why we do what we do. And before we shift onto something else, I also just quickly want to say that with the tantric work that I do, there's also an inherent belief that, you know, there's a polarity of masculine and feminine within us. And men that have been walking around in a male body generally have quite a mature masculine in relationship to their feminine. And that goes the same with our partner. If you have a partner that's a female, then there's a very high probability that the feminine inside her is going to be more mature than her masculine.
Can you just quickly explain what you mean by that as well, the feminine and the masculine inside of ourselves?
Yeah, sure. So there is a different energetic, really, and it's really about archetypes that we're talking about. And you know, you can have the king, warrior, magician, lover that many people have talked about, and we won't confuse things too much. But there is this philosophy around the masculine being observer without judgment, creating safety, structure, and is also in some ways like the doer in the environment, right? And then you have the feminine, which is more of the receptive and is feeling and connected to the magic and is into that nurturing. So it's, you know, the masculine is very much, I'm going in that direction and this is our safety and, you know, I'm holding this, where the feminine is more fluid and dynamic and receptive and more in that emotional body. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And so you're saying that we all have both of these elements inside of us, but people who have spent their whole lives in a male body have often developed more of that masculine energy, and vice versa. Females.
And the relationships that we have in the outside world are very reflective of the relationship that we have on the inside world. And this is something that I just truly believe across the board, that everything that I see in my world is a projection or reflection of what's going on inside of me. So if I want to change anything out there, I need to change what's happening in the film, in the projector, not get angry at what's on screen and try and change the color of the screen or what's on the actual screen, but come back to what's in the film, in the projector. And that's me.
Makes so much sense with that metaphor, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And we get so angry about what we see on the TV or on the screen that we start, you know, it's, you know, you see people that they literally throw things and break the television because they don't like what's on it. It's like the TV didn't do it. It's like, don't kill the messenger. And for the inner feminine, which is very emotional and feeling based, which has been shut off by within a lot of men, because we've been told, you know, real men don't cry. You know, one of the things my dad said to me is, look, when I was crying because I was emotionally upset, come over here and I'll, you know, spank you and give you something real to cry about. To allow that to mature it requires safety. And a man in his masculine body often has a more mature environment for this fragile, immature feminine to mature. And being a man being able to drop deep into his vulnerability and held safe by a man allows him to mature that deeply.
Beautiful, beautiful. Just make sure I don't have another alarm going off. So I love hearing all that, and I'd love to bring all of that back to how we actually started that the conversation today around the balance of service and making sure that our own tank is full, or at least has enough in it to keep going.
Yeah.
And so how do we apply all of these pieces we've just been speaking to when it comes to leadership specifically? When we are, whether it's by nature of our role or whether it's just the way that other people have placed their trust in us, how do we show up as leaders with as much emotional health and all of these other concepts as possible?
Yeah. It's a really good question. And I think the importance is to understand ourselves. And the more we understand what is happening within us, the more dynamically we can respond to our environment. And the less we're going to be in a reactive state. And obviously, the more reactive we are in a space, the less conducive we are to creation, right? So if we are a leader and every third time someone says something, it's going to trigger us and we're going to like fire an emotional response at them, that's going to make them feel attacked. And they're not going to say, wow, Jason inspires me. Jason scares me, intimidates me, upsets me, or just makes me feel like I don't want to be involved, right? And so when we can be in our authenticity, and this is what I refer to as kind of our inner flame, our inner fire, when we can focus and build that, then there is this essence of I'm radiating me. And my me doesn't resonate and feel comfortable with everyone. And that's not my role, to make everyone comfortable.
Yeah.
My role is to be me as fully and gracefully, so in a way that I'm aware of my environment, because I don't want to be agitating just because, that arrogant narcissist of, well, I'm being me, so it doesn't matter if I punch you because that's what I wanted to do, right? That's not what it's about, but it's about really being in that thing of when something comes up and you're like, okay, well, you know what that does for me? That makes me so excited to be able to share this with you. And that reminds me of this piece. And what I would love to ask you is, what does that bring up in you? And that's leadership, and something that I've heard, which is really beautiful, is you don't need to have a cup that is completely overflowing, because there's no room to receive. And it's always nice to be able to have a little bit of room in your cup to be able to receive what's happening and be able to take in what is going on around you. And then from that, be able to digest it, take your time, and then be able to respond in a way that, they talk about this in astrology around exalting. Okay. And what that is when there's one planet behind another planet or something, and then one actually amplifies the other. And it's almost like I'm a candle of light and you're a candle of light, and together we have two lumens, right? We're twice as bright together, and my brightness can amplify your brightness, and your brightness can amplify my brightness. And it's not, well, if I'm going to shine my candle, that I need you to put your candle out, otherwise people won't see me. With the two of us shining, everyone sees more. And if a third light came, then people would see even more. And how bright can we make it so that we can see a lot, right? Yeah. And that's how we become leaders. A leader is someone who creates leaders, not someone who has a lot of followers. And when you are emotionally attuned to you, it's much easier to be emotionally attuned to someone else. And you can recognize the journey that you've had and the triggers that have set you off and how you've been able to manage that, so that when someone else is getting triggered, you've got compassion and you've got awareness, like, wow, okay, sorry, that triggered you. Let's just both take a breath for a second, because that wasn't my intention. So, what I was meaning to say is, and I'd love to know what you heard, because it's important to me to know why this triggered you. Because if we're going to be working together, or if we're going to be loving together, then I want to understand, like, why was this an edge for you? And it's this compassion and compersion of wanting to make 1 + 1 = 3, which is you and me, and the energy between us is the third.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm really hearing this element of co-creation in the dynamic there over competition.
Yeah.
It's not about me being right at your expense. It's about, even if it requires a little bit of support at times, like, how can we together get the best outcome for, as you said before, for all, not just the people involved.
Yeah. And it's a bit like the relationship dynamic series. So you've got the original codependent, where me half, you half equals a whole, right? And you complete me, and without you, I'm nothing, and all of that. To the independent relationship, where there's me and there's you, and I'm completely fine on my own, and we can cohabitat, but like, I'm me and you're you, and let's not like merge our energy, because I don't want to be depleted by you. To the interdependence of, I am me, you are you, and together we can carry something that's twice as heavy. Right?
Yeah, I hear that.
So and that's how we become leaders, and we create leaders, is by inviting people to come in and carry half.
So creating interdependency in all the dynamics, which then, I guess, what would make sense is it becomes a bit exponential then, doesn't it, when you've got different relationships with a large number of people. Yeah. Amazing, brother. Is there anything else that you feel is important to share around the topics we've covered today, or the work that you do? I'm sure there's like a whole,
how many weeks have we got?
But in this particular conversation.
Look, I think a basic tool that I've been using is with the Reactivated Man program that I've been doing, is this inner flame. And a recognition, and it's a real simple attunement of, like, where is my fire at right now? Is it like getting sparked by what we're doing right now and getting bigger? Or do I feel like I'm actually smothering or depleting my inner flame? And the more radiant that I am, the more I'm able to support others. You were talking about this relationship of caring for me and caring for you. Well, the greater capacity I have personally, the greater capacity I have to support you. And there is this thing of, if you're doing the spiritual work, you should do it all for free. If you're being of service, then you should serve until you die. It's like, why? Why should that be the equation? Why not allow myself to regenerate and actually reactivate myself to a point where I'm going to say I'm going to pause for right now, and then when I come back, I'm going to have so much more ability to support you. And a classic example of that is, if you've been working all day long and it's 2 a.m. and you continue to work, like, the capacity of work that you do between 2 and 4 a.m. isn't a lot, right? Because you just, and for most people, I know that some people have the capacity to just keep going, but most people, right? For me too. Yeah. And then it's like, if I just go to bed at 2 o'clock and then get good sleep and then get up a couple of hours earlier than I would have if I worked through till 4, what I'm going to get done in those first 2 hours is going to be so much more relevant and so much more, filled with more capacity. So that kind of thing. And it's really important when we're in a relationship, whether that work or private, and we're getting to that point of, like, I feel like I'm about to break here, to stop and pause and say, I love you, but I just need to look after myself for a moment. I'm not denying that this is something we need to talk about or something we need to move through, but I'm just letting you know that right now I can't do this. And it's really important to me. So I want to come back to this, and we can schedule a time, or I'll let you know that I'll come back as soon as I can. And that could be 2 minutes. That could be 2 weeks. It could be 2 months. You know, we don't know what the scenario is, but it's the ability to say, right now I'm triggered and I'm actually not responding authentically. I'm just trying to stay alive here. So let me come back to a place of feeling nurtured and nourished so that I can actually let you know what I mean.
Yeah, love that. So tell us more about the Reactivated Men program.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. This is a 7-week online program that I created this year, and it goes through a lot of tools. But the main piece is if my fire lights up inside of me, then the first thing it does is it creates an inner sense of warmth and nourishment. So all of a sudden I feel like I have a capacity to self-soothe and look after myself better. But also I start radiating into the world more. I actually start shining my light into the world and being of greater service in the world. But another thing that it does is all of a sudden, the brighter we are, the deeper we can shine through the waters, the emotional waters, and we can start touching on these aspects that we've been hiding from. And when we have our own fire and we feel safe within that, we also have a stronger capacity to say, actually, you know, this is my boundary. And I'm really clear that this is my boundary. And you're getting really close to my boundary now. So I want to make sure that I'm communicating really clearly that this is my boundary. And our ability to do that when our own flame is burning stronger is so much stronger than when we feel weak and out of capacity, that someone's coming close and it's just like, oh, I don't know what to do and what to say. And they keep coming closer and they keep coming closer. And now they've gone past my boundaries and I still don't know what to do. And then there's an explosive response because that's the last ditch effort of, you know, like a wounded old dog trapped in a corner. It'll just snap at anything where, you know, that's not what we want. Yeah. So we go through a whole range of things over 7 weeks of really integrating that deep in the person. We go through the different archetypes of the king, warrior, magician, lover. We bring in the polarity of the masculine and feminine. And I'm a deep, what's the right word, supporter of the Gene Keys work, which is based on human design and a development that came from that with Richard Rudd. And a dear friend of mine, Mark Bentley, is an expert at this work. So we do 3 weeks together building up to this. And then in week 4, we actually get Mark to come in and we speak to one of the spheres in the activation sequence. If you know the Gene Keys, you know what that means. If you don't know the Gene Keys, it doesn't matter, but it speaks to our radiance. And so it literally speaks to our inner flame, our light. And we can, based on your time and place of birth, speak to certain language around how this might affect you personally. And that opens up that world for people as well. But yeah, we speak about the competition, communication. We talk about, you know, there's a beautiful brotherhood that gets built and there's deep vulnerability that gets shared over time with these men. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
And then in March, we have another powerful journey being created with another epic facilitator, Greg Barwick.
Yeah.
And it's going to be right near Melbourne. So love to hear a little bit about what's in store for that. I know there's a lot of it that is in the mystery, but just what can people expect if they're interested in diving deep into this work?
Yeah. Look, for me, this is really deep, profound work, because when you have a 7-day container with just men, there is a level of safety in that container that's built that goes beyond what we're used to. And we have a capacity to really delve deep into these emotional childhood wounding patterns that come up from competition, relationships, our relationship with money and work, the relationships we have with our brothers. And it just touches it on such a profound, deep way that it's so transformative. And yeah, just having done a few of these this year through Europe, and in Bali at the start of the year, I'm so passionate about this work as real deep core work. Like if you haven't done any men's work, then this is going to be a stretch. But if you at the same time have an openness and a willingness to dive deep into the emotional body, then the space is there. You know, we had a 17-year-old boy in the Netherlands come. And so we had a 17-year-old boy. We had a 68-year-old man.
Yeah, wow.
All in the one container.
Amazing. Yeah, speaking from my own experience of similar containers, what I love about this type of work is that it takes me places I never would have thought. Firstly, I would ever go, but even if I was there, that I would be able to go.
Yeah.
Like, it takes me to the edge of the cliff, and then when I think I can't jump, I get given the support to make that leap.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, I've now expanded my own realms of possibility in my own life. And I get to take that expanded version of myself back into the outside world. And my life in even the corporate world has dramatically transformed to be beyond my wildest dreams. And I put it all down to doing this type of inner work, to choosing to constantly show up, face my fears, take back responsibility for the things that I was previously putting out there into other people and to other situations, and look inside and be like, what is it within me that's causing these things? And how can I show up in a more empowered way? And it's not easy work, but it's definitely rewarding work.
Yeah. It had a huge shift in my reality as well. The life that I'm living now was very much by design, that I feel was only available because of the work that I've been doing in containers like this, where those deep limiting beliefs get witnessed and acknowledged, and it's fair enough that they were there, because at the time it was important for that belief to be created for safety for my being. And after that scenario, it didn't need to be there for safety anymore, but it stayed there as a limiting belief and controlled the way that I lived and shared in the world. And I think one of the things that's really important is for men to fully understand their capacity. And, one of the things, and this is an extreme example of, I could never commit suicide or commit murder, right? But the truth is I could. I could physically strangle or stab or shoot someone. It's physically possible. And the more I own what I actually can do, the more I can then set an authentic boundary of, but I won't, because I don't want to. And so we're actually taking this ownership of, what is my capacity? What can I actually do with my being in the world? And then from there, what do I choose to do? And, this is that claiming of our own boundaries, claiming of our own authority, as opposed to outsourcing what I can and can't do, and saying, I can do a lot in the world. And there's only a little bit that I actually choose to do. And it's quite counterintuitive for a lot of people, that is just like, well, you can't do that. It's like, you can. Yeah. You actually can. But do you want to?
Yeah. I hear the empowerment in that.
Yeah.
Real taking back of what do you stand for in this life?
Yeah. And then that is a big piece. Like, what do you stand for? What makes you stand in the world? And we're not asked that often enough.
Yeah, amazing. What makes you stand in this world, Jason?
There's a few things, but freedom is a big piece. Freedom, love, and joy are my 3 core values. And I think that they're very intertwined, but the freedom comes from following my joy and expressing it with love. There is a mission statement or a vision statement that I have, which is, I live to see a world where ease harmonizes within every single being, that the genius can just shine through, and we almost become a witness to that, and we're just in awe of this thing that is shining through me. It's like, wow, did you see what I just did? I can't even believe that came through me. And you're the same, and you're the same, and you're the same. And it comes through this place of being able to be authentically and shining our light, and in Australia, we have a huge tall poppy syndrome of don't be too bright, like chop him down. Whereas, the vision that I have is that we are these shining bright lights. And then we're told to put this filter in front and this filter in front and this filter in front. So by the end, the viewer on the other side is like, is there light coming out of there? I can't even see. And so at these week-long events, we really start to pull back a lot of these filters and help us to get in tune with this magnificent flame that's inside of us.
Amazing. Where can people find you if they want to connect more?
Yeah, so Jason Bart is the best place. So at Jason Bart on Instagram, and jasonbart.life is my website.
We'll include those links in the show notes as well. Jace, thanks so much for an amazing conversation.
Thanks, Fatty. It was great.
And much love, everybody.
Much love to you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Leaders with Heart today. We really appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And if you did get value out of today's episode, it would mean so much to me and to Jason if you shared it with anyone else who you feel would get value out of it. In these early days of building the podcast, anything you can do to support is massively appreciated. So liking the episode, sharing it, subscribing, giving it a 5-star rating, all of this is a huge help to spreading this message of leading with heart. And as we mentioned, if you did resonate with this and you want to go a lot deeper, there is a 9-day retreat happening called the Initiation Journey in March 2024 in Melbourne. Look at the link in the show notes to find out more. And if you want to connect on anything else with Jason or myself, our social media handles are in the show notes. Mine is pattymatt.truth on Instagram and Leaders with Heart on LinkedIn. Have a beautiful day.